All right, today's gospel reading is from Luke chapter 20, verses 41 through 47, and also chapter 21, verses 1 through 4. As always, I'll be doing the explanation according to the Blessed Theophylact, who is an archbishop from the Ohrid region of Bulgaria from the 11th century. 41 through 47. And he said unto them, How say that they that Christ is David's son? For David himself saith in the book of Psalms, The Lord said unto my Lord, Sit thou at my right hand till I make thine enemies the footstool of thy feet. David therefore calleth him Lord. How is he then his son? Then in the audience of all the people he said unto his disciples, Beware of the scribes, who desire to walk in long robes and love greetings in the markets, and the chief seats in the synagogues, and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses, and for the pretense make long prayers. The same shall receive a greater condemnation. In the explanation here, because he is shortly to go to his passion, he now proclaims his divinity, but he does not do so openly and brazenly, but in a most humble fashion. He asks them a question, first causing them to be perplexed, then allowing them to figure out for themselves the consequences of the answer. For David, he says, calleth him Lord. How then is he merely his son? Christ was the son of David according to the flesh, but he is also David's God. But the scribes thought that that Christ was only David's son. Therefore, he first refutes their opinion that Christ is merely the son of David, and then he reveals that he is in no way opposed to the Father. On the contrary, he has such oneness of mind with him that the Father makes war against Christ's enemies. This much he addresses to the scribes, and then he turns to his disciples because he sent them out to be the teachers of the whole world. It is fitting that he exhort them not to imitate the Pharisees with their vainglory and love of being first, and in general their worldliness and desire to please men. For those who give grand salutations in the marketplaces do so to flatter those whom they meet and to honor them as virtuous and upstanding men, or else they make a show of their salutations in order to receive donations. Not only this, the Lord says, but with their greedy appetites they also devour widows' houses, eating them out of their house and home. They use piety as a pretext to gain entry, and then, masking their purpose with prayers and blessings, they teach drunkenness and gluttony instead of fasting. For this reason, the Lord says, They shall receive greater condemnation, in that they not only do evil, but make a pretense of prayer. They make a show of piety, and under the pretext of virtue do evil. They shall receive a greater condemnation because their actions defame piety. They ought to take pity on the widows. Instead, they enter into the widows' houses, supposedly to bless them with long prayer, and the widows feel obliged to lavish hospitality on them, and thus impoverish themselves. In verses 1 through 4 of chapter 21, and he looked up and saw the rich men casting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor widow casting in thither two mites. And he said, Of a truth I say unto you, that this poor widow hath cast in more than they all. For all these have from their abundance cast in unto the offerings of God, but she of her destitution hath cast in all the living that she had. And the explanation here, the temple treasury, to which those who loved God made contributions, was used for the upkeep and repair of the temple precincts, for the adornment of the temple itself, and the feeding of the poor. In later times, the priests appropriated this money, dividing it amongst themselves, and using it for purposes other than those for which the treasury had been instituted. The Lord praises the widow more than all the others because she cast into the treasury everything she had to live on, despite her destitution. These two coins, although they may seem trifling, were in fact the entire living of this widow, who was so destitute that she fed herself by begging. When the Lord renders to each his due reward, he does not consider the amount given, but the amount left. Therefore, what those rich men gave was small and trifling, because there was so much more left to them in their houses. But the house of the widow was empty, and nothing remained. It is altogether fitting that she was more worthy of praise than they. Some have also understood the widow to represent every soul that has buried her first husband, the old law, but is not yet worthy to be wedded to the God of the Word. But she offers as a pledge of her betrothal what little she has, her still small faith and a good conscience. For we must offer not only faith but a good conscience as well, which means an upright life. If anyone approaches God in this manner, he is seen to cast in more than those who are rich in learning and have pagan virtues in abundance.